Welcome to Four Witnesses to the Truth. Once again, you came coming back, which gives does my heart good. Something is keeping you coming back and checking in on the progress of each week. And if you miss a week, I keep hearing, "Oh no, I watched and I want to see what's going on." So I'm thank you, thank you for your interest and participation. We have already, let's do a quick little review, shall we? We have already come to realize that Mark penned a rather stark account to those who were being wrongly blamed. That's what they were wrongly blamed for, that fire in Rome. And then they were persecuted because of it by Nero. And his message was full of lots of be brave and persevere, just like your leader Jesus did. And because guess what? You're going to suffer also. Be ready. Mark has good news for them. You'll be saved. Our Savior lives. So will you. It's a good message for his Judeo-Christian friends that are around Rome. Matthew then, however, wrote like a wise rabbi. He's writing to, remember, the dispersed group that is no longer in Jerusalem. They are demoralized. They are feeling really bad because they revolted and revolted and revolted, and it has gone to nothing. And now the Romans came in and seized the city. The destruction of their holy temple took place, and there was banishment from Jerusalem itself. And so Matthew has good news for them. We heard last week that, hey, our Messiah has come. Our Messiah is here. Just come on, get on board. This is where we're going with this. And so our Messiah has come was Matthew's main good news to his displaced Jews. And here was our timeline, just a reminder. All back this way, many scholars are going to put writings in this time frame, somewhere around there. They don't have it exact. They can't tell us. It's probably not exact. But we do have these backgrounds. Here's what's going on in the world. Here are things that our gospel writers have said that then makes a lot of sense as we hear that and see that with on those backdrops. Okay, you're with me so far. Good. This week we're going to turn to our third gospel, the Gospel of Luke here. Okay, Luke is coming along, and this witness comes from a compassionate doctor and traveling companion of Paul. He is coming to another community that is deeply in need of some good news. Luke's witness is written for the non-Jews, for the Gentiles. He wrote in a style typical of the Greek literature of the day and sophistication that was part of that. Remember, we saw this a little bit in week one, I should say. He starts off by saying things like, many have undertaken to draw up an account of the things that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the first were eyewitnesses and servants of the word. And with this in mind, since I myself have carefully investigated everything from the beginning, I too decided to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the certainty of the things you have been taught. Oh, you lovers of God. Theophilus, that's what that means. Let me lay forth for you. Yeah, that's a little bit of a play on word, Theophilus, I believe. Could be one person, could be all of them. But the gospel itself further indicates that Luke knows and relates well, bless you, by the way, Brett, relates well to the culture in which this patron, this Theophilus, lives. He is attuned to what's going on, its sensibilities, its expectations. So, for example, Luke establishes Christ's timeline. Where does all this fit? Well, he's not going to write it like our two others did. Matthew, remember, put it all in terms of all the kings going back and back and back, right? back to Moses, back to all these different places. Welcome, ladies. Glad you're with us. Watch how Luke avoids all that because that's not his audience. And so he writes about Roman magistrates and uses phrases like in the time of King Herod, king of Judea, or he's going to use phrases like in those days when Caesar Augustus issued a decree. You get in your minds, oh, that's when that's happening. They're not going to know when such and such a king of Israel was around, but this will speak to that crowd as they know, oh yeah, I know when that took place now. Like we were talking about years just recently and going, yeah, oh, I know how to mark that. I know how to put that in a language and in a time frame that people will understand. Okay? Luke is no fool. He knows his audience and how they think. We know that Mark comes to us from a suburb outside of Rome. Matthew was written from. Good job. I am very impressed. I don't know if I would have been able to pull that one out of my hat if I were in your seats, but good job. He was in Antioch. So we have those two up on the screen, up on the backdrop, I should say. And so do we know where Luke was located? Not specifically. However, we can narrow it down. Because if indeed Luke was a traveling companion with Paul, as many believe, well, that would mean that following Jesus's death, he traveled extensively and could have easily ended up with Paul, who ended up in Rome. He's going to reference that in some of his writings later on. And he's going to probably be with him up through and maybe past Paul's execution. So whether Luke stayed in Italy or not, that's not clear. But we can rightfully, I think, assume the following, that since Luke is writing to a Gentile audience, and since his message became so popular, then Luke must have known the backdrop of what was going on in their lives to be able to speak to their situation. What is happening in the Roman world during those days? He had to know their pains in order to convince them that Jesus is good news for you. Indeed. Here's your quick lead in. I'm glad you all have enough people to chat with right next to you. Here we go again. Here's your question of the night. Here's your question of the night. So what would be good news to your neighbors right now? I think you asked me that, or somebody in the crowd asked me that a while back. And I go, what would be good news here? You got about 2-3 minutes. What do you think would be good news for your neighbors right now?
Right. So what would be good news to your neighbors? I recognize I know, so I recognize. And we can put the greater good about our differences. And that's right. If you're talking about my next door neighbor, or you're talking about just people in my world,
Who is my
Wherever
neighbor?
you want to go with it.
Who is my neighbor?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Yeah.
You got about 30 seconds.
So. Is trying to.
We can back it up a little bit.
Okay. Well,
That was-
would be good, right, so, because so many people just stay in their own side.
I can't talk to anybody. Unless you talk to
Yeah, once I get, like maybe especially next time, then I'll be better at maybe pulling off and doing a sidebar with online folks or something.
Yeah.
I'm just like still so focused on getting
I know. Yeah. All right, let's come together again. Let's come together, see what you got. Like, it's just getting you thinking like they had to think. What is going to be good news about Jesus Christ to your neighbors? What have you got that just popped into your head? There's no right or wrong answer. What's that? The planet needs to heal?
Has.
That would be good news. The planet
Oh,
has-
that would be good news. Yes, the planet is healed. Yes, thank you. Got it. All right. Yep, other things? Moisture, rain.
Goes with
Send the
the
flood, Jesus. No, no.
Just heal the earth and we'll get it, right?
Yeah. Maybe not California, but to here would be good. In your neighbors, right here, my neighbors. Yeah,
Mhm.
specifically. Yeah, anyone else? Yeah,
People working together.
people working together. Jesus brings us together. That would be good news. Carmen is in the little lens there. Do you have anything you want to add, Carmen, about what would be good news for your neighbors, or are you?
Well, it wasn't my direct neighbors, it's my distant neighbors. All I can think
Uh-huh.
of is an ending to all wars. And I
Amen.
Ending
Yeah.
to all wars.
yes,
We would probably have Jesus the peacemaker, much more so. Wow, nice. But you got the idea. What is going to be good news? Matthew's gospel, remember, in the timeline, it is written approximately 10, 15 years after Mark. Puts it somewhere probably in the late 70s there. Luke is going to come along 5 to 10 years after that. I think timing's important.
I have a question about time.
Yeah,
Okay, so Jesus died in 33.
yes,
Okay, so now we're talking 50 years after that.
yes,
So, I mean, how old, if Luke was a disciple,
yeah.
how old was he when he was a disciple? Because 50 years later, so let's say he was a disciple when he was 20,
Mhm.
now he'd be at least 70. But, you know, were the disciples that young? Or I would think of them more as Jesus's age, not like 10, 12 years younger,
Sure.
because they're still boys.
Well, so if they were about 30 in the 30s, now they're going to be 70, 80. But they probably have been out talking to lots of people. Remember, they used to have lots of rabbis would have their followers,
Right.
kind of their school or their
Mhm.
their students, their apprentices.
Mhm.
So especially when you get up to John, and he's up there even further, they're going to say probably the school of John wrote this,
Right.
or he put together parts of it, but they finished it.
Mhm.
Yeah, we had an actuarial person that's sitting in the back.
Right.
Yeah, they're going, they're not living that long. Was that you? Yeah, I'm going, that's not how long.
Well.
Yeah, how long are they gonna live? It was not that long. We were living longer and longer, but
But right, so was Luke one of the 12 disciples or not, or don't we know?
no, I think you look that up again. I don't think so.
I don't think
it was
so.
a traveling companion with Paul is what I was told.
Right, okay, right,
Mhm.
right.
Supposedly, yeah.
So he could be younger who started
Okay.
after the fact. So
Right,
Also-
right, so if he wasn't one of the 12, then my point is moved
Mhm.
because, right.
yeah,
It was also, yeah, Luke Acts too, you know, also.
don't get ahead.
Uh,
Moving.
so
Let's
he
go
was
back.
around for a while, was my point.
Let me go back to mine.
Well, okay.
But yeah, that's why it's sort of a squishy timeline here. But let's just see what's happening in the world.
Okay,
Okay, because these dates are a little more solid. Year 79. After a decade of finally Nero is gone, things are stable. It's under the rule of Vespasian. He dies. He died in 79. And so now remember his son, who was attacking Jerusalem in the last go around. Now Titus becomes his successor. Titus is at the helm for a grand total of 2 months, and this happens. The eruption of Vesuvius. What's that?
Tough break.
Tough break, yeah, I mean.
You're the
Yeah.
ruler here.
So let me clarify why this is kind of significant. This mountain hasn't erupted since prehistoric times. Okay. It is going to obliterate the whole resort city of Pompeii and all the surrounding towns under a rain of toxic fumes. Yes. And volcanic ash, in certain areas, they have measured the volcanic ash reached a depth of 200 centimeters, which is 5.5 feet of toxic ash. Estimated death toll was 16,000 in these towns, men, women, and children. Some Christians, of course, are going to interpret this as God's vengeance for all the things that Nero did, against the persecutions, etc., which may sound good if you're a Christian, but maybe not to others. It could be rather dangerous if you're thinking, oh, God is going to come smite you all. That doesn't sound like maybe a God to get behind. So just keep that thought going. Realize too that Pompeii, where is that located? It is about only 100 miles south of Rome. So here's Pompeii, there's Vesuvius, there's Rome. If you want to know, that's like if this is Edina, 100 miles means you're going to Sandstone or you're going to Painesville, which I think I'm driving to tomorrow. Or you're going to Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Those are 100 miles away. Google Maps told me that fact. Okay. Which I would say if any of those towns had a volcano that obliterated all of Eau Claire, you think you would have heard about it? I think you would have heard about it. I think we would have had efforts, I would hope, we would have efforts to go for a decade or more dealing with the cleanup and the fallout and the adding aid and things. It was that part of their culture? I don't know, but I'm just going to say that is too close for comfort. Wow. Your whole city can be gone in a blink. They got maybe a lot of fear going on too. So having Mount Vesuvius go off 2 months after Titus takes over in the year 79 was a huge issue. But you might as well turn the page and go to the year 80 and you're going to run into this. The second great fire of Rome. Lovely. It's not going to last for a week, but it will last for 3 days and nights. It may not wipe out 3/4 of Rome at this time, as if it's all built back, but it did destroy several important public buildings, including Agrippa's Pantheon. Agrippa was a king, and the Pantheon was the temple of the gods with a small g. The temple of Jupiter, which was the most important temple in ancient Rome, and parts of the theater of Pompeii that were expanding, and 2 public voting halls, which I can't really even pronounce, but there they are. I mean, there were big public buildings destroyed by this fire. That's in the year 80. So yeah, you're starting to get the whole backdrop here. Let's just add some things here. Mount Vesuvius is going to take off. Here's where we are on the map with Mount Vesuvius, and lots of things happening around Italy and Rome again. The Great Fire is going to take place again. And one more thing. An epidemic of diseases is going to spread and kill our new emperor in the year 81. Put all that together, that's a lot of turnover in an area. I would call that political disruption, if anything. Holy cow. Nero taking his life, to Vespasian dying, to his son taking over, to his son now dying. And by the way, there's still rumors that his brother killed him to take over the throne. Oh, there's just roiling of the tabloids, if there were such things going on. You die of a fever or not? We're not going to know, but let's see. You got political instability, volcanic eruptions, destructive fires, a pandemic. You have a world turned upside down in this area. in a very short period of time. Does Luke ever mention any of these things? No, he does not. He doesn't go there. But since most scholars are going to date the gospel is in this area, and this is what's happening in this area with these exact dates, I think you're safe to go out on a limb and say these events were creating some of that backdrop. Perhaps even the motivation for why Luke has good news for you. Let me try to explain this in a different way. We haven't done this before, but I'm going to show you a little video, 3-minute video, which I think to me kind of speaks, it's something for today, but it's going to speak to, I think, why Luke wants to bring good news. Okay. It is a recording in the wake of a prominent United Methodist named Junius Dotson. You remember him. He passed away, I believe, from pancreatic cancer several years ago. And Adam Hamilton himself will give this short remembrance in 3 minutes. Take a look and I'll tell you more about why I think Junius and Luke are similar. Here we go.
It was his smile and his kindness, his compassion, his love for Jesus and his love for people that drew people to Junius. At least that's what drew me to Junius. Our lives had intersected over a period of years. We both started new congregations. I 6 years before he started Genesis. We met then and shared a common vision for ministry. We were surprised by how much we saw the world in much the same way. Then he came to Kansas, and I was so excited that he was in Kansas and pastoring a large church, one of our largest churches, and doing great things and really taking off. And we compared notes and would share, and I preached there, he preached here. I spoke at his leadership conference, he spoke here. I was so grateful for Junius. And we would kid around that maybe with our two churches doing what we were doing, the capital of the kingdom of God might move from Texas to Kansas. Then he went to work for the General Board of Discipleship. Twice I tried to recruit him to serve on our team here at Resurrection as our senior executive pastor, preaching and leading this congregation with me. But he rebuffed me both times. He went to work for the General Board of Discipleship and continued to write and speak and preach and had a vision for helping the entire church see all the people and draw them to Christ and see lives changed by the work that we do. But there was one thing that was troubling him. In 2016, we were talking together, and that was that the church that he loved seemed to be excluding some of the people that he loved, people that he cared deeply about who didn't feel welcomed in the church. And so together, along with several others, we formed UMC Next to help the United Methodist Church become the church that it could be in welcoming everyone with open arms and helping people find their lives transformed by the power of Christ in our churches, no longer excluded but welcomed. This was personal for him. He had people he deeply cared about who needed to hear that they were welcomed in his church. I remember 2019 after General Conference, the disappointment in his voice as we talked late at night, as he said, how can this be the church? Let's work to change it. Let's continue to work to change it. And that's what he did. When I look at him, I think of somebody skipping a rock across a pond, and every place he landed, there was a ripple, right? And that ripple continues through us, through every person who was affected by what he wrote, what he preached, what he said, what he did, how he led. We continue to be the ripple that changes the world. Tosca, his good friend, companion, co-laborer, said just before he died, he was in the hospital, and she had insisted that the nurses set up a computer so that she could have a continuous Zoom link. She couldn't be there. They wouldn't allow her to be there. So she had her computer on at home, and that way in the middle of the night, if he needed anything, he could call out, and she could call the hospital. And at 1 a.m, she was awakened, and she looked, and he was looking at her in the computer. And this is what he said, Tosca, God can be trusted. Despite the pain, despite the news that he had only weeks to live, God can be trusted. God can be trusted. God can be trusted. And so today we entrust to God our friend Junius Dotson, giving thanks to God for the blessing this man has been and will continue to be in our lives. Thanks be to God for the gift of Junius Dotson.
God can be trusted. My heart breaks, is what it sounded like. His heart breaks, and I think Luke's heart broke for those who were told that you couldn't come to the church. He opened it all up. The message was God can be trusted. God can be trusted. Come. Join us. This is good news. I never think it's just an academic exercise. I think it's a heartfelt, the people crying out and needing. I've got something to tell you. My neighbors are in pain. I want to tell you, God can be trusted. I want to tell you, all are welcome. Come on in. Don't feel left out. That's why I think Luke is writing. I think he had people he dearly cared about, groups out there that were breaking his heart. Wanted them to know, come on in. Join what we're about. Christ is good news for you. Let's dive in, shall we, to what is Luke saying? Let's hear his testimony, his witness, how does he put it all together? Throughout Luke's gospel, the Gentile audience is especially uplifted and uniquely recognized throughout there. It's like the Gentiles, the Gentiles, the Gentiles. Yes. And so here's the first one right near the beginning that says about Simeon. Oh, Jesus is a little baby being taken to the temple, and Simeon was this old man in the temple. And then remember the story, it's sort of right there on Christmas time. And Simeon took him in his arms and praised God and saying, "Oh, sovereign Lord, as you have promised, you may now dismiss your servant." Him saying about himself, you can just dismiss your servant in peace. I am ready to die, for my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the sight of all nations, a light for revelation to the Gentiles. Right off the bat, this baby is recognized by Luke in those words, and the glory of your people, Israel. Yeah. And Luke is going to craft everything. Remember what these other two have done, but even edit it, to expand it, to leave things out, add something else. When you talk about the genealogy that Matthew started off with, he's not going to talk about all these kings, but he's going to go all the way back further. He's going to talk about, for example, Jesus himself was about 30 years old when he began his ministry, and he was the son of so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and then it goes all the way back to Enosh, the son of Seth, the son of Adam, who was the son of God. All of humanity, he's pointing out, are children of God. Just stop at Moses or Abraham. This is the one who's here for all of us, all of humankind. And at the sending out of the disciples, watch this subtle change of language. Okay, Jesus is about to send you off 2 by 2 to various places. Luke is going to carefully omit whatever limiting words Matthew has. Let's see what Matthew says. Matthew's version is, then these 12 Jesus sent out the following instructions: do not go among the Gentiles or enter any town of the Samaritans. Heaven forbid, in Matthew. Remember, who is Matthew's audience? The lost sheep of Israel, who have been scattered and are all over the countryside without a Jerusalem anymore. Luke isn't going to quote that, but he's going to say, drop the whole Gentile thing. After this, the Lord appointed 72 and others and sent them out 2 by 2 ahead of him to every town and place where he was about to go. He was about to go. I'm going to go see them too. And he told them, and there it is, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers to his harvest field. There is nothing about avoid Gentiles or just go to the dispersed Jews. Go far and wide. It is so plentiful. This is how they take it and just change it ever so slightly. And if you're talking about, oh, avoid all those Samaritans, well, guess what? Luke has a story. I think you probably know it since the church is named after it, but Luke is the only gospel writer to record the account of this parable of the Good Samaritan, which, as you may recall or not, goes like this. In reply to a question from a lawyer, a man, he says, was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers, and they stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him for dead. And a priest happened to be going down the same road, such a holy man. And when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. Another slide going forward, and so too a Levite, another holy man, when he came to the place and saw him pass by on the other side. But did you say Samaritan? Really? This half-breed scourge over here that we don't want to talk about and associate with? Yeah, the Samaritan, as he traveled, came to where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. Here's a man of the wrong race and the wrong everything, questionable religious background, and he's held up as the model of neighborly action, as opposed to like certain respectability and pious leadership among traditional pious people of God. Here is the one that Luke will now start opening up. Watch the behavior. It's not about rank. It's not about birth. It's about how you live. And of course, there's another popular story of, let's see, it had a father and it had two sons, I believe. Only Luke tells this parable of the prodigal son. Here's Rembrandt's version of what that looked like. To the original audience, you see, I think this prodigal son story spoke volumes about the relationship between Gentiles and Jews. Okay, here it's Luke's description of this new family, but it's always been there. Description of a new church which Christ is forming, which will accept both the older, presumably more faithful brother, over to the side, who represents the Jews, alongside the, shall we say, the younger, the newer to the fold, the newer ones being brought in, the younger ones who've had ways in their past that were rather reckless, he would say, more prodigal, more sinful. That represents the Gentiles in some cases. And so now in the Father's house, aka Christ's church, both are being welcomed in with open arms. Yeah, here's one more poignant story that embraces those that should be outside and left to their demise, and casts a vision instead of a unified humanity, shall we say, in the church, a unified family again, brought together and reconciled if possible, but certainly both are loved by Father, who I believe they would say is the God figure in this story. All are welcomed back home. Oh, I could talk about that one for a minute, but let's keep moving. So you see how Luke is using a message that he wants to craft, but we've been looking at this one passage, and we'll look at it again before you all have to run off to your other places at exactly 7 o'clock. I know how this works. Let's take a look again at Jesus's trial scene. Okay, this is where the subtleties are again telling. Okay, in Mark, you'll remember that that contained a lot of graphic images, images with flogging and mocking and lots of violence. Okay, because that's what they were living with back in Mark. Matthew also echoed a lot of those images because that's what's just happened to destroy the temple, and there's lots of bloodshed, and it's on our hands. Remember all that. Pilate, though, Matthew's version has Pilate continually saying he's innocent. He's innocent. I don't know why you want this. And he says, we have no one to blame but ourselves. Pilate's washed his hands of this. He tried to set this guy free. We have no one to blame, but the blood is on our hands and on our children. It's what is in Matthew. So now let's look at Luke's version to see what he has to say, or maybe more importantly, try to pay attention to what he doesn't say again. Okay? Watch how he edits things to make this accessible to the crowd. He goes on for 25 verses. Maybe that's what the Greeks and Romans all preferred, was a good long dissertation about a court scene. I don't know, but yeah, we're not going to do all 25 verses. Okay, but let's jump in the middle. This will be after Pilate sends Jesus that fateful night. He goes, "Oh, you're in Herod's jurisdiction. I'm going to send you over to see Herod." And here's how it starts. So the chief priests and teachers of the law were standing there, just vehemently accusing him. And so then Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him, dressed him in an elegant robe, and they sent him back to Pilate. That day, Herod and Pilate became friends. Before this, they had been enemies. What an interesting little addition, if you ask me. Going on, Pilate called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was inciting the people to rebellion, but I've examined him in your presence, and I found no basis," there it is again, "for your charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us, as you can see, and he's done nothing to deserve death. Therefore, I will punish him and release him." One more. But the whole crowd shouted, "Away with this man! Release Barabbas to us!" Barabbas had been thrown into prison for an insurrection in the city and for murder. Seriously. Yeah, only Luke is going to go into all of these details. And not one, but now you've got two Roman magistrates who find him innocent. You've got a king and a governor, both saying, no, he's no threat to Rome. We don't find anything worth death here. Two of them are in that way. And isn't it wonderful that Jesus has even brought them together and now they're friends? I just think that's a very interesting phrase. Brought these two enemies together and now they're friends. This is just a wonderfully safe and wonderful story. A choice between Barabbas and Jesus. It's like black and white. Of course, you're going to choose Jesus, and of course they don't. If they choose this convicted murderer, can you believe it? Of Rome, instead of this very innocent one who is no threat to Rome at all. Hard to believe. And then it goes on to say, is that where we are? Yes. So wanting to release Jesus, Pilate appealed to them again, second time. But they shouted, "Crucify him, crucify him." For the third time. Boy, is Luke hammering it home. 3 times he's going to say, for the third time he spoke to them, "Why? What crime has this man committed? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore, I will have him punished and then release him." Okay? But the loud shouts, they insistently demanded that he be crucified, and their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. He released a man who had been thrown in prison for insurrection and murder. All they asked for, surrendered Jesus to their will. And as the soldiers led him away, they see Simon from Cyrene, who was on his way in from the country, and put the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. And by the way, there was no dot, 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 dot. That was just one continual narrative. Hmm. Hmm. And they immediately, the soldiers led him away to Calvary. Well, I hope you didn't miss all the gory details. Or should I say, where are all the gory details? There are no gory details in Luke. Oh, there's a little mocking. Oh, they'll dress him up. Ha ha ha. But you know, he has omitted the blood and the everything completely. You know, sure, he's been punished, but when the time comes for it, Luke just sort of skips over all of those floggings and spittings and crowning of thorns and all the rest that are painful, and probably those are not the things that most Roman citizens are very proud of, nor need to be reminded of. Instead, Pilate simply surrenders Jesus to their will. And off they go. Interesting how the story is tweaked for the audience to hear it.
So
Luke,
Luke is writing to Roman Gentiles.
yeah. Yeah. And that's great. So Luke, let's just finish this. We'll get into all those extra things here. Luke is going to conclude his gospel there with yet another one-of-a-kind account that is nowhere else. It involves a story about two who are walking on a road after Jesus has been crucified, put in the tomb, and has been resurrected. Okay? And they're discussing what's taking place. And the road happens to lead to a village to which they're going, and implies that that's probably where they live, because it seems like that's where they go. Come be with us in our home. It's a village. Well, do you know what the village is called?
Man.
Oh, you know the story. Any of you? You know the story about Emmaus? Well, before they get to Emmaus, the two encounter the risen Christ. By the way, I just wrote this up. I think it's for your newsletter coming out. That these two are the first to see the risen Christ, according to Luke. The others are told by an angel or some such thing, or they run and they don't see anything and they don't know what's going on. These two encounter the risen Christ first in Luke's gospel. They encounter the risen Christ, have the full story revealed to them. Together they break bread together. Their hearts burn within them is how the story goes. And they are, I don't know if it's converted or their eyes are open and now they understand. They may have been followers before, but they certainly get it now. And then Jesus disappears and then they run off to tell everybody. Okay. Now, what we may not realize, and I don't know how to justify this, but I'll just tell you what the history books say. That emperors Vespasian and Titus had set aside a special place for 800 Roman veterans in a village just up the road from Jerusalem, starting this project in the year 68. The name of the village was Emmaus. What is the saying? That therefore the two on the road to Emmaus were probably veteran Roman soldiers? And these are the first ones that Jesus appears to in Luke. And he tells them all the story of the sacred scriptures, breaks bread with them. You're hearing how radical this little story is now. If that is indeed who is with him, Their hearts are on fire by the Holy Spirit, and away they go. Isn't it intriguing? The layers of meaning. The life, death, and resurrection of Jesus have opened up to a whole new group of those that were considered outsiders, opened up by Luke or Luke's followers or whoever penned all this for us. And woven throughout all this, you're going to find not only good news, but invitation, implied invitation, come be part of this with us, invitations for Theophilus and all like him to, hey, join us on this journey with Jesus. It's kind of like you can just hear it through this, what's going on. Like, hey, you who have suffered so long to volcanoes and fires and pandemics and more, we hear you, we care, Christ cares. We believe Jesus has a whole new church in mind. The church as it could be, should be, like we heard with Junius and Adam Hamilton there, welcoming everyone with open arms and helping people to feel their lives transformed by the power of Christ. And you know what, Theophilus, you too can be, who think you're on the outside, you too can be a part of this. If you feel like the younger son that's shunned and made too many mistakes, you're ready to be welcomed home here in this place. Theophilus, come. You too is open. You are open and welcome in this family. And the burning hearts who hear the stories on the road to Emmaus, that could be you. Oh, Theophilus, let your hearts come alive with this good news. So what we started was, what do you think your neighbors need to hear? Well, I dare say some of your friends are feeling like outsiders, also need to hear the news that Luke shares. Oh, you who feel spiritual, but are fed up with the church, God can still be trusted. Luke is sensitively reaching out to you, and maybe we should be too. Don't worry, Jesus is here for you. God can be trusted. A whole new sense of church, of family can be taking place. Build it with us. Turn to God and all your world that's upside down and all its turmoils, its economic turmoils, its pandemic turmoils, it's everything. Let your soul be quieted in this one called Christ. The kingdom has already come. It is no threat to Rome. You're welcome in the house of God. Yeah, the message can feel like it's almost too good to be true. But if you're an outsider, the message of Christ, life you need. The message that Christ suffered and died, not just for them, but for you. That would be amazing. I dare say a lot of our journeys of faith are when we suddenly realize it's not about them. That message is for me. Christ did all this out of love for me. Okay, I'm going to give you another 4 minutes again to write down whatever you want to write down. Remember this, remember that. Write down your questions, write those all down. And I picked a song just to play in the background. You do not have to listen to it, but it's there. I think it's by an artist named Lauren Daigle, if I'm saying her name right. She gives voice to someone who has just heard the good news. I think her voice is like the one that Luke is writing to. Someone, maybe I always picture like she's talking to somebody from ancient Rome, a former Roman soldier, perhaps, a veteran, someone like you who's wrestling with it all. And the question inside of them is like, how could this be? So take 4 minutes while the song plays. We'll come back and finish it up, and jot your own notes of what you want to remember too.
undone what I've become. These hands are dirty. I dare not lift them up to the Holy One. You plead my cause, you right my wrongs, you break my chains, you overcome, you gave your life to give me mine. You say that I am free. How can it be? How can it be? I've been hiding, afraid I've let you down. Inside I doubt that you still love me, but in your eyes there's only grace now. You plead my cause, you right my wrongs, you break my chains, you overcome, you gave your life to give me mine. You say that I am free. How can it be? How can it be? Though I fall, you can make me new. From this death I will rise with you. Oh, the grace reaching out for me. How can it be? How can it be? You plead my cause, you right my wrongs, you break my chains, you overcome, you gave your life to give me mine. You say that I am free. You plead my cause, you right my wrongs, you break my chains, you overcome, you gave your life to give me mine. You say that I am free. How can it be? How can it be?
There's Luke. How does Luke end? Let me be more specific. How does Luke's good news, testimony, his witness, how does it end? Why don't you turn there if you got a Bible and tell me what you see? What do you see?
Like some of the other gospels, he doesn't stick around very long.
Doesn't stick around very long.
I mean, I get the impression like reading some of the others, there's maybe 40 days before he ascends to here. He ascends almost immediately. He sees the guys on the road and he shows up in front of the 11 and other people and then he knocks out and he moves away.
So don't you all have, it ends here with his ascension, is that? I'm sorry, it was a trick question again.
Thomas is just wait.
Because what?
He says, wait, we're not done here yet.
We're not done yet. You know why he's not done? Because you're only halfway through his testimony.
Sorry.
Taking away the punchline. He has written part 2. It's called the Book of Acts. So next week, you get to hear part 2 of Luke's gospel. I will dare call this also a gospel. It is his testimony. The first half dealt with God working through Jesus. The second part is God working through the people. You only got the intermission here.
Did Luke write the book of Acts?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't- that's neat.
How do we know that? It's really quite obvious if you start reading the first lines of Acts.
Mhm.
You will hear it say, "Oh, dear Theophilus, here I go again." So, Acts chapter 1, and in those opening verses, he is again writing to Theophilus, and we'll have another whole book which gives witness to the power of Christ. But he's taken it a lot further than just the life of Jesus. He's taken it into the whole spirit as well. So next week, Luke's sensitive outreach continues. And we will look at the second half. So, and in any good intermission, you get to stand up, go to the restroom, get a soft drink, and then come back in a week. All right. And we'll finish it. But thanks for being here tonight. I'm actually 2 minutes ahead of 7. So those of you who really need to get to music.
Luke part 2 next time?
Yes.
And then John the following.
Yes.
Oh.
You were wondering how I was going to fill up these weeks, weren't you?
I thought John, that's what week 6 would be able to. Okay.
Yeah, I could do a wrap up too, but
Yeah, no, yeah, no, I could try that.
Carmen, thank you for joining us. We hope you had a
Oh,
good time.
thank you so much.
Yeah, take care, Carmen.
Thank you for being there.
Yeah, have a good night.